beginning, just to have all of the minutia and good thoughts and vibes that are going on anyway. But at any rate, I've gotten it started now. We'll continue to figure out the right answer. So the first thing though I did want to mention is please stay connected. I think, all of you found places where you kind of overlap or have similar interests. You're all on the invite for this meeting, I think. So there's an email there that you could use to find one of the other folks if you want to follow up with them. But also, by all means, if you want additional information or anything, let me know. I'd be glad to figure out how to get you in connected. And also, we've got the Facebook group, and the LinkedIn group is another way to keep the conversation going if you find new information or want to share something with others that are interested in this topic. Please use those as a way to keep this thing going. And the other thing I wanted to mention just very briefly is one of the things I saw this week that just really kind of hit me between the eyes is I was digging in and I found the Alaska Forward project that was done about 10 years ago. And this resulted in a group being formed called the Alaska Economic Development Group or Cooperative or something. And it was a group that was formed in about 2009 that was made up of all of the state's 12 or 13, and I know that sounds like a Alaska Native corporation number, but I still believe it was about that number of economic development organizations from around the state. And it had ADA, it had all the players of folks that are in economic development. And it had $100,000 of money that came from the state of Alaska. It had $500,000 that came from the Denali Commission to fund this group to work on the question of how to take Alaska forward. And they, over the course of the first year or two, ended up doing their stage 1 assessment report. And two things. A, if you read the assessment report, nothing's changed. Secondly, that's as far as they got. $600,000, and all they could do was document what we already know. So to me, it's just a renewed lesson that, while money might be helpful at some point, money is not going to start changing the trajectory of where we go. And I'm not sure what will do it, but in that case, an envious amount of money didn't take us anywhere. And it does take money to do things, but that doesn't mean that money will accomplish what we want. So at any rate, so what I wanted to do, building off of the proposal that Kitty brought to us, is spend just a couple minutes on looking at the first of 7 organizing principles today. We'll take about 10 minutes on this, and then we need to get to some updates on other things here. I've put in the chat a link to the Miro board. And if you can, and I'm also going to share the screen, so if you can't get that up, that's fine. I'll share my screen so you can see it that way also.
Are you able to add me as an editor?
I think I can. Just a half second. I'm working on. Can I use the Fairbanks Climate Action email?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm not a Miro genius, so I'm working on it. Okay, you should have a invitation now. So so let me scroll this up if you're just looking at my screen on it. So the first principle is one of wholes. And again, these are 7 principles of regenerative design. And wholes talks about the ability to see that this organizational thing we're working on is kind of a distinct entity. I don't know if Kitty, if you want to explain that a little bit better. I also found, let me drop this in here for a second, and then Kitty, maybe, oh, shoot, I got Margie's email address in there now instead of the stuff I had clipped or saved. There we go. Here's a little more that I found on it. but it's the first principle of that. If you're trying to figure out where I am in the Miro board, if you click on the K for Kai on there, you'll follow me. So it'll jump you to wherever I'm at on the board if you're trying to navigate. But Kitty, anything more you want to say about what holes is? Because what I want to do is just take a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and do some brainstorming on elements of the whole or things about AKV3, because we're talking about the organization of AKV3 and how we do it. And I just want to collect some stickies from you about thoughts or ideas or reflections on what would make us or what would define us as a whole. Kitty, can you clarify that a little bit more? Give people maybe a little bit of guidance on some stickies.
I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot. And it's related to one of the other concepts of nestedness. So really what you're looking for is what is the whole, and I think we're talking about this networking space. And one of the ways to help think about the whole is also to think about the nests that we sit within. So I was reading up on this with another colleague that's doing some regenerative work, and I think can help us is to think through what are the interdependent and reciprocal parts of the system that we're seeking to affect and influence and guide and develop. And so it's in service of a system that's as large as Alaska, in my humble opinion, or even beyond that, the Arctic. But I think mostly we talk about Alaska and this tremendously diverse and interconnected geography, cultures, watersheds, the economies. So that's at that larger whole level of what we're in service of. And so the whole that we're trying to be in service of, if you think of maybe 3 nests, okay, so Alaska might be this outer nest. What we're trying to do is this inner nest, and it's sort of via some pathway. So it could be via networks of networks was one of the things we talked about. But really you're looking for that which stands sort of together, like in all of the reciprocal parts that we depend on. You do, ultimately draw a dotted line boundary. I mean, we're not talking about the entire global sets of economies and ecosystems because we're trying to look at the whole here. So anyway, I've rambled a little bit. I'm not convinced that's helpful at all. But I actually looked at this all week and I kept thinking, what could I contribute? And I got a little stumped. So I feel a little awkward that I've offered this and I realize I don't have an answer. But I do think it's important for us to think about sort of what is the breadth, the fullness of the spaces we're seeking to influence and shape. No clarity there, sorry.
Just as a matter of mechanics, if you're not familiar with Miro, it's basically a fancy way of doing a virtual whiteboard. The 4th thing down on the toolbar allows you to click and then put a sticky down wherever you click in the board, and then you can put text in the middle of it. You can also click on one of the sticky post-its that I've already done and do a Control-C, Control-V and paste one in there and then edit the text. And you could also, if you want to, drop something in the chat and I will paste it in there for you. So take a couple minutes and just whatever comes up here. We won't work this too hard. But the question is, in terms of wholes, what would make this a distinctive autonomous thing within this system of economic development, workforce development, community health, individual health, climate change, energy transitions? What's kind of the unique whole that might define our effort, this organization, that allows it to exist within all of the rest of the systems and layers of the onion in a distinct, healthy way? I've thrown in a couple ideas of mine, just brainstorming. I didn't plan these ahead of time, but just a couple things to suggest some ideas. Any questions on mechanics or anything I can do to help you be able to post something? Or I'll give this couple 2 or 3 minutes without yammering at you if you want to try some stuff. I'll watch the chat also if you want to drop anything in there for me to post for you. Aha, someone found the line tool. Thank you, Andrea. I got yours posted. Great, Laura. Thanks. I got that posted. And Andrea, I got that posted. Who is that? Mita. Mita, let me try and do that. I'm not sure why some of you need access. There's a mystery there that looks like some of you are needing that. Some of you already have it. It should have been open access for anyone with the link, but obviously I've done something wrong. Okay, so Elijah, let me get yours in there. Okay, I think Laura, I got yours on there, and Elijah, I got yours in there. I'll give it another minute or so in case there's anything else folks want to add in here. Okay, Kitty and Andrea, I got your 2 items in there. Yeah, Andrea, I think that's a good point. I want to capture that in there because I think it's going to always be a constraint for us in terms of how to bring people on, allow them to participate fully, and yeah, that building that trust is unfortunately sometimes a slower process, and sometimes we wish it was. Okay, anybody need any more time, have something they're working on?
I do have a question.
Yeah, Margie.
So I guess in terms of the prompt of what a whole is, like, is this, and maybe you'll have an answer, or maybe that's what we're figuring out, a network, an organization, a program, like, is that, do we have a kind of sense of like what the permeable boundaries of our whole is?
I don't know that we do. I have this sense that this is kind of an iterative process of trying to explore these questions. And, you know, I think of Kitty's original information on this that involves kind of putting out a proposal and getting some dialogue and then a reproposal. It kind of suggests an iterative process. And these 7 principles, to me, they begin to kind of entangle themselves a little bit along the way. And
Exactly.
so I think there's a process of trying to sort that out. But if I can, let me just bring back. Do you guys see Kitty's presentation? Did that pop up now in place of the mural board?
No.
Oh, good.
But just to underscore, that's right, Kai, that this isn't going to get perfect, probably ever, but by stretching our heads around some of these concepts of whole, then we can start adding other levels, like what is the essence of who we are and what this is and what's the potential. Then we think through, like, all these other pieces, and they'll start to inform one another. And so just getting started with one, and then we can add to it in future conversations, we'll begin to see some resonance, and the picture will sort of start to come together with a lot of iterations, I think.
Yeah, that's helpful.
And one of the things that I think would be kind of interesting to do is to think about 3 nests, like, and to start to give those some distinction. So we kind of realize that this whole is in service of larger systems.
Cool. Okay, I've got the 7 principles on the screen right now. So I just arbitrarily started at the top. I'm a linear kind of guy, and
I think that makes sense.
and so ideally the next week we'll go down to potential and start exploring that one, and we'll just kind of work down through these. Although at some point, if it becomes obvious that we should look at the order a little bit differently, that would be cool also. But the idea is to each week explore a little different facet of a regenerative organizational system and see where it leads us in terms of our thought process. And the intent here is not to create some sort of core group top down kind of thing, but to look for some organic life to the work we can do and the value we can create in the process. Cool. Okay. Well, I appreciate you spending a moment on that. This Miro board is linked through the agenda document if you want to come back to it. The intent is that each week we'll continue working out of this same board and continuing to build stuff on it. So it'll all be in one place down the road for additional information you want to see on there, and updates, and potentially even moving things around as we discover that maybe things need to go in a different place or have more value as a different facet of that. That is now to lead us into some quick program updates and where we're at. The Arctic Domain Awareness Center speech I did on Wednesday happened. It was really an invitation to a really interesting group of folks that are working across the country on Arctic issues, and basically without using AKV3 explicitly, it was making the pitch for how the investments being made in developing the Arctic could be done in a way that is helping build the future economy, helping strengthen this as a place for people and communities in there. And as promised, I even had a chance to tease them with my new words: regenerative economies and just transitions. So Margie and Carly, who's not here, thank you for giving me new words to the work we need to do and how to think about doing that. But I had a chance to do that. So I'll leave it at that. When I do get access to the recordings and the material there, I'll be posting that and sharing that. So you'll be able to see more of that. And I'm still kind of looking forward to what kind of reaction, if any, I get from it. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to get Sarah more involved to help me clean it up in the process. So it was a Kai speech for whatever that's worth. Ryan, what happened with BEC?
Okay, so with BEC, the Business Education Compact, it's a group that meets about once a month and is organized largely by Dave Reeves. And this group had a panel discussion on Wednesday with several different industry leaders working in innovation with Launch Alaska, with Rachel Miller, and ag and food security, with Taylor Holthouse and the blue economy. And then let's see, we had some gentlemen with the FFA and ag education, and then also two folks with the maritime task force. And these folks through the discussion, we're looking at what is changing in Alaska, what innovations are happening in their fields, what are the impacts that we're experiencing, and how is that impacting Alaskan jobs? And then we drew that back to, okay, these changes are coming. Here's what you're seeing in your industries. How can educators help to prepare the workforce of tomorrow to be ready for these jobs? I mean, it was a really interesting conversation that we saw a lot of commonalities between the different industries. There continued to be this need for hands-on technical learning, because there's a recognition that folks getting into these industries and fields, for some, a university degree is the right fit. For others, having more technical trades-based skills is a good fit. But a common missing factor is just the awareness that these career fields are out there. It was brought up that that for some folks, their dream career in high school is to be a rapper. It's not to be an oyster farmer. And they just don't even know that that's an option in our state. And so that really looks like a continued conversation and collaboration between the different industry verticals and the educators, offering internships of a sort or educational experiences for the educators so that they can take that knowledge back to their classrooms, offering presentations in classrooms, offering tours, and then just continuing the conversation on the basic skills that are needed. It was a great highlight for me of how well-rounded you needed to be if you were going to be a business owner, if you were going to be a fisherman, if you were going to be a farmer. It's not enough to know the specifics of the field. You also need to know how to market the work that you're doing and do the bookkeeping for it. And so there's just a general entrepreneurship and innovation education that has to happen for folks to be successful. But the big thing was that the state's changing and there's a lot of potential. And so there's a focus on just being ready to realize that potential so that we can get Alaskans into those future Alaskan jobs.
Thanks, Ryan, for pulling that together. And, one of the things I'd observed, I only got a chance to listen to a little bit of it before I had to go, and I really appreciate Ryan moderating the panel and bringing all the speakers together. But to me, there was I hope we will see a really important inflection point. This discussion, this group has been meeting for 20 years. And I would say, and I'm being a little extreme here, but I would say they've been really effective at being able to bring industry and education together to look at the jobs and the preparation of Alaskan for the existing Alaskan jobs. And I think there's an inflection point that happened in the last couple of weeks with this group preparing for this panel that got them to begin thinking about an innovation, a new economy, and what does that mean in terms of a change to the kinds of jobs, the kind of skills? And I think that inflection point is really profound in terms of getting folks to kind of shift the thinking from getting people ready for the jobs that exist and getting them ready for the jobs that we could create. And I hope that dialogue continues. I think that was something important that happened. And I'm just so appreciative of everyone that came together for that, and looking forward to the recording so I can hear the whole thing and share that with others, because I think it was, I hope, a powerful message, but it also built some really, I hope, lasting, powerful connections between those people who are leading innovation and the discussion about innovation, and connecting them with education and Alaskans and this question of workforce development. How does that play into what is otherwise an entrepreneurial discussion, but it doesn't always bring in the workforce development aspect of that opportunity. Other questions or thoughts or anything on that one? I thought it was really incredible. Cool. Okay. Thanks, Ryan, for doing that. And if you see and hear about recordings or other information coming out of it, look forward to learning more and being able to share more.
Yeah, thank you. I'll look forward to sharing that. I'm going to be looking for it as well. submitted for an innovation short for the Juno Innovation Summit that's coming up to share that with a larger audience. So I'll be hoping to distill that a little farther. If you guys have related thoughts that you think I could fit into that conversation, please feel free to send them my way.
Thank you very much. Okay, watching the clock here. Let's see, innovation shorts. Ryan mentioned he's got one. They're due today for anyone who's interested in doing an innovation short for the Innovation Summit. I would encourage all of you to think about how your unique programs could be showcased in that virtual conference coming up in April. I've put in two. I never get both of them. I never always get all of them. But I've got the one that I've mentioned in innovation economics, kind of a little more wonky side of my life, as well as my pitch for an innovation hub and innovation coalition model after the Calgary model. Ryan, you mentioned you did the one on the workforce development. Sarah and Pasquale, any update from you on the one you guys were talking about working on?
Yeah, I ended up putting in an application for AKV3 as a whole, this idea of this topic that we're discussing. Since, you know, we've been working on the messaging, I figured that I could just translate that quickly into an application. And I had to build my first entrepreneur resume, which was weird.
I love it.
But I did it, so.
We're moving you into the world of big business and all that kind of stuff. Sarah's got a resume now.
Well, I mean, like, I've had a resume, but I haven't had one for, you don't use a resume to apply for like freelancing gigs. You give them your portfolio, you know? So I've been working with a portfolio for years at this point. So to have an entrepreneurship thing require a resume was just so weird for me. But I, you know, it's a quick way to consolidate everything that you've done. And luckily I have a couple of publications on entrepreneurship and stuff. So.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, I very much relate to that. We submitted one as well, and I didn't change my resume. I was like, this doesn't speak to what they're looking for, but that's okay. It's what I have. And it also, I think, speaks to some of the barriers to folks who are not insiders getting involved.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm lucky enough to have a background in resume writing. That was the first 2 years of freelancing for part-time for me. So it came very easy. I just whipped one up in Canva, but I understand that it's a massive barrier for most people to know what even needs to be on a resume.
well, and to Margie's point, to a certain degree, you know, part of what they're doing is a bit of filtering to try and figure out who are these folks submitting a short, and is this going to be something that they want to have on stage in terms of not being surprised by something. So there's a little bit of vetting going on, and it can be, I think, a barrier if there's new people coming in with fresh, valuable ideas. But if nobody knows you, if you're not connected, if the folks doing the screening say, who's that person, then, you know, the idea, it's not as much of the merit of the idea is, to a certain degree, you've got to be known, and somebody's got to have some trust for you. You know, to be just very blatant about it and obvious, you know, I put in mine, I basically, when I submitted mine, I said as a reference, I said, just go see Brian. You know, I know the executive director, CEO of the guy. So, you know, I'm a known quantity there. If I put something in, I don't need to be vetted. I don't need a resume. They just know, but that's what they're looking for. But I have that privilege. But I also have used in other cases to help put my thumb on the scale, because they'll call me up and say, who is this person? Should this business be pitching? And going to help out. So at any rate, anybody else got any shorts or any thoughts on that? Cool. Margie, I'm so glad to know you guys have got one in there. I was going to ask if it didn't come up about doing that, because I think it's really valuable. Let's see, writing program. Kitty has gotten some support for the Alaska Humanities Forum to do that. They didn't quite step in as far as I wanted them to. I was hoping that they were actually going to be a sponsor, not financially, but at least organizationally, and let us use the logo and their name as a sponsor supporter of the writing contest. So it's a kind of soft level of support to the whole thing that's got me kind of half in, half out in terms of wanting something a little more significant to give the contest some cachet in terms of a name on it. So, Kitty, anything more you want to add on that?
Well, concur. They still are willing to publish the winners in the Summer Forum magazine, which comes together in June and July. It comes together and then is published in August. So if we can stick to the timeline, there is visibility. But it isn't like we can say this is a forums writing contest. It would be ours, and they would promote it in their social media and do a blog on it. So if we can sort of stand that up, it's probably, I think it's worth doing, because I think it brings new voices into it, brings that creative sort of the humanities. It can lead to like artistic impressions. I think it's an important thing to do. I love the idea. So yeah. And it might be worth us offline, Kai, you and I could maybe brainstorm complementary like partners in addition, rather than solely relying on the forum.
Anybody else interested in the writing contest and want to help this?
I
I'm so
I'm sorry, was that a yes from Mita and Sarah?
Yes, for me.
yeah.
If we're looking at, painting or doing anything with photo or video, then, I'm interested in that, but that's maybe a step or two down the road.
That's the fall version that has been discussed with Humanities Forum, is moving into visual art. So thanks for that. Okay, I'll follow up with you. I'm quite frankly, I really burned myself out this week, so I'm trying to recharge right now to get my enthusiasm back up to go, chase another windmill. So I'll do that. I'm going to try and move towards wrapping up today, because I know the clock keeps ticking, darn it. We still need to think about some sort of meetup kind of activity, whether that's small groups and some of the work that Kitty's introduced me to or something, but I'll just leave it. That's out there, and that's going to take some development. But for the moment, we'll work on getting this writing program thing launched and then circle back around on that. There is a open period that just opened with the Humanities Forum for some more grants. We'll keep watching on that and discuss that. Had a great conversation with Carly Wire from the Native Movement on regenerative economic regenerative economy activities. So that was a great connection. I think Margie helped make that connection. I appreciate that activity on there. Wrapping up communication, still looking for any of you that would be willing to write a blog about kind of your experience with Alaska and your thoughts about the future, or Facebook or LinkedIn posts that you'd like to contribute on there. And I'll turn it over to you, Sarah, for other thoughts.
Yeah, I was gonna hop in anyway. I was gonna say, if anyone has an idea, but they have no idea how to frame it or how to talk about it or whatever, you can always reach out to me. I do have like a backend. We have a backend like Trello board for some kind of like content ideas, so you can always get access to that if you're interested. Kind of see what else we've developed. Yeah, no, I'm totally here and willing to help you develop content ideas, even to the degree of just how to format it in a way that's engaging for social media or in a blog post. Happy to act as editor here. So, and I can, of course, kind of walk you through why I make edits and that sort of thing too, depending on how much touch you feel you need. But yeah, in regards to the blog posts that I'm creating, the next one that was up in line for us as AKV3 was who is AKV3? So a couple of like the founding members, and I think also Kitty, and I think I forwarded to Margie too. Haven't heard any feedback from that, just to be straightforward. So if we want to write that one up, I'll need feedback, because it's, who you are. But my thoughts now is letting that one kind of develop over some time and working on another one in the meantime. So no one feels like, super rushed to talk about themselves. But yeah, just a touch base on that regard.
Wonderful. Would you do me and maybe others a favor and recycle that request for comments? Because I think I've buried it working on that ADAC thing. I kind of, that ADAC thing just kind of blew my
No worries. It's been a really, really busy week for I think everyone. So I feel you on that burnout regard.
Yeah.
I will send a follow-up on that same thread.
Thank you, Sarah.
Can I jump in real quick?
Please.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm totally burnout too. I think we all we all are. But I was kind of ruminating on the idea of maybe asking for your help to co-create. I was thinking like a paper, but maybe a blog is a good place for it. But writing up the traditional economic foundation for the Tlingit people And of course, I don't speak for the whole nation. It would just be from my perspective as a piece, but helping to put it in like that economic framework, because I'm not an economist, right? But seeing if that's something that maybe I could get Kai's help or some, maybe a couple of people from the group helping to write it up and frame it.
I love it. I'll put it on the content calendar, and Mita, if you can at least kind of frame this thing out a little bit in terms of the giving me kind of a place to understand kind of your thoughts on that. I'd love to collaborate on that, and then bring Sarah into it to help demystify the Kai's, make it easier to be able to digest. I think we could do something. I would absolutely love to do that. I don't know, are you also thinking, Mita, because I'm so fascinated with the discussion that we had with you at some point about the notion of traditional prophecy, and some of the thoughts that come out of that body of knowledge and knowing about the future for Alaska. Is that part of what you're thinking of here, or is this just a little different?
It's a little different. I mean, they could be intertwined in the same space, and that's fine. But I was thinking of like a spotlight on, because I sat with an economist who was visiting Cake when we were out there doing some work and talked about it, and it kind of it was a good conversation. And so I realized that there isn't probably as much like dialogue or written material on the traditional economy. And I think that maybe there's lessons that we could take from that and apply it to, future and how to be successful in Alaska. So they can be intertwined, and now I'm rambling because I'm in this thought space, but I think just lining out what did a traditional economy look like would be really important. And we can use those lessons because it was crafted over, 10, 20,000 years of living well in this environment.
Yeah, well, I think what you're talking about would be so valuable, because I actually feel somewhat to a lot uncomfortable when I talk about kind of those three economic models of our state. And I talk about the first one being the traditional subsistence native economy. And, I kind of come off like thinking I know about it, and yet I don't, right? I'm projecting on my knowledge of history, but I really don't know what that economy is. I can't speak clearly to it, and I maybe even shouldn't. So I think, Mita, what you're bringing up would be incredibly valuable, and I would really appreciate it, because I think it would add substance and I hope meaning that other folks could find value in, beyond just my superficial broad brush.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think as a collaborative piece, it could come out as something that's tangible and that people can actually use.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, good. Well, we'll put it on the I'll put it on the content calendar that's shared, and I probably need to remember to put some Trello links in the documents here so people can find that. And yeah, again, if you can kind of start to kind of outline a little bit, and Google Doc or whatever, share it with me and others. We'll start trying to build that out. I think it'd be super valuable. Thank you for thinking of that and offering that something we could work on. I would really value that.
Wonderful, thank you. And now I have to jump.
Yeah, I think we all need to jump. Any final loose ends from anybody briefly? Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much for joining the discussion today, and we'll be on the calendar for next Friday at 10 o'clock again, but don't hesitate to reach out anytime in the meantime. This is fascinating work, and you're all great people to be working with. So thank you for joining me today and being involved in this discussion. We'll see you next week, if not sooner.